Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 15th December 2017. Supreme Court clears 12 special courts to try cases against politicians. You know that the political corruption is the mother cause of every corruption in India. Erosion of democratic structures is happening through criminalization of politics. And third thing is, if we have to balance the citizens' right to have a fair representation and an individual's right to contest the elections, the citizen's right to fair representation has to override the latter's right. In this context, the Representation of People's Act was amended and disqualification provisions are existing. But dilatory criminal justice delivery system, slow criminal justice delivery system, making it ineffective, and many of the politicians who have criminal charges against them are able to occupy the highest offices in the country. So in this context, the criminalization of the politics, if it has to end, the justice delivery system have to be effective and active. So the Supreme Court has advised for the creation of 12 special courts to try against politicians, to try cases against politicians, which is a welcome move in decriminalizing the politics in India. Hearing on Aadhaar validity put off. So with regard to the Aadhaar Act and right to privacy concerns, let us see few dimensions over here. You know that the right to privacy is a fundamental right now. It is part of the life to lead a life with dignity. So is Aadhaar violative of right to privacy is the first concern. And second is, there is no data protection law in India. Third, Indians are not very sensitive to the protection of their own data. So most of them are illiterate and they casually give away their sensitive data to various vendors. And I'll tell you one point, be cautious and be jealous about safeguarding your internet connections. Don't try to give away your Wi-Fi connection to any other person or password to any other person. Even he may be a close friend to you. That's what my advice is. The next aspect is the right to privacy. Can it be violated for providing welfare programs to the people? So if tomorrow Supreme Court declares that if Aadhaar is violative of right to privacy and government makes it mandatory for welfare programs, then the poor people who are accessing the welfare programs are denied the fundamental right to privacy. It means the rights stated in the Constitution are becoming more economic exchanges for various welfare programs, which will be stated as anti-constitutional. So these are the various dimensions in which the arguments are going on in Supreme Court. Editorial. Let's go to the editorial page. So with regard to editorial page, try to understand the Russia-India-China equation. So this RIC, a strategic triangle, it was first proposed by Primakov in 1998. The situation in 1998 was very much different from today. So at that point of time, the strategic triangle was supposed to balance the hegemony of the United States of America. So unipolar world, in that scenario, a balance has to be created through the emerging economies. At that point of time, so the Russia was relatively powerful, but it was collapsed. Though China was emerging, it was not asking for its space in the global affairs. And India, it is more of a democratic space among these three countries. So India is dependent on the Russian defense imports and India-China trade was growing. But all these countries, that is, have Russia and India both have territorial dispute with China. So the major idea of creation of the RIC is to have a balance of power with the United States of America. And in this, Russia wants to regain its lost space and China wants to increase its trade and India wants to secure its position. But today the things have dramatically changed. India is moving more close to USA and West and it is diversifying its defense imports. And Russia and China, these are moving close to each other. Today, most of the defense exports of Russia are to China, and there is technology transfer to China. So, the China was not like a silent power as like in 1998. So, today China wants to claim its position in the global affairs. And added to that, India's relations with China are also strained. So, the Russia is no more the major defense partner or defense importer, or is defense exporter to India. So, in this context, Russia is moving more close to Pakistan, which is a concern for India. So, Russia has promised to provide $2 billion worth of weapons to Pakistan. And they also wanted to have defense exchanges, military exercises, which was opposed by India, and it was finally dropped. Coming to China, One Belt, One Road initiative was a major concern for India. And second, the recent Doklam issue clearly states that how vulnerable relations between both the countries are. So, Afghanistan, both Russia and China are trying to increase their role. You know, already the country which is existing over there, a strong presence over there, is USA. USA today wants greater role for India, which is a changed stand. On the other hand, Russia and China are opposing for a greater role for India in Afghanistan. And third aspect of this dimension is Russia wants India to join One Belt, One Road. And recently, the Quad, which was proposed by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in previous term, it's a democratic axis. It consists of India, Japan, Australia, USA. So, this particular Quad, it is more seen as a containment policy or containment group against China. It is to contain the growing power of China. Now, China feels that India is a pawn in the greater game of containing China. So, both Russia and China, they have criticized this Quad indirectly as a closed block mentality. So, in this context, one thing we need to understand in diplomacy is this. Diplomacy shall not be a zero-sum game. It means if you are onto this side, you can't engage onto the other side. There is nothing like that. So now India has to develop the critical abilities for a multi-pronged diplomacy to engage with different players simultaneously. That is the carry home point for us over here. So what we have discussed. So first is how situation in 1998 was, how situation after 2 decades in 2017 is. In the process, what are the developments happened? How the RIC has become insignificant because of these developments. Those are the things which we have discussed over here. Whether disaster management after Oki. So any disaster management, it shall have early preparedness, and it has to finish the disaster activity through relief and rehabilitation. So early preparedness, it will save hundreds of lives whenever a disaster strikes a nation. Because of climate change, disasters are going to be a frequent event for a country such as India with a vast coastal border. So, we have National Disaster Management Act, Disaster Response Force, National Disaster Authority, all these systems were there. But during Cyclone Oki, why did these fail is the major question. Remember one thing. The early response is very critical. So, always the first line of defense for early response is the local police station and local revenue officers. In India, they do not have proper training in disaster response. So, we have to create a machinery which goes to grassroots level for disaster preparedness. And second aspect, jurisdictional limitations and lack of coordination between the agencies. If you see, many of the fishermen were onto the sea when the cyclone was struck. So, the Coast Guard has limitation up to 60 nautical miles. Then after, Indian Navy has to take over. It means Coast Guard and Navy, they have to coordinate with each other. So interagency coordination for disaster relief is absent in India. So these systemic failures have to be addressed to make the disaster response effective in India. Here as an example you can quote Japanese disaster response system, which is said to be the best in the world. Next is revival risks. The second quarter showed a remarkable revival of the manufacturing sector in India. But however it appears, restocking by the producers and traders was the reason for this revival. In the third quarter, manufacturing sector has dipped again. Exports did not improve. Inflation is on rise. These are the concerns for Indian economy. And already in the previous articles we discussed that private investment is a major concern. And House rules. Now here it is written in the context of the Brexit. But let us see from a bigger dimension of referendum. Today referendums are increasing across the world. Either you talk about Kurdish autonomy or you talk about Brexit. Everywhere countries are talking about referendums. Are these referendums sidelining the existing parliamentary systems? What shall be the actions of a parliament or a legislature after a referendum was thrown to them? So, these are the fundamental dilemmas. What is the legitimacy of the referendum? You saw the crisis in Spain. You saw the crisis in Brexit. Remember one point. Referendum is a process by which an elected representative house is moving away from its responsibility of making decision and throwing the decision onto the shoulders of the people. And once the decision is made, it is more of a kind of an binary. Binary means an yes or no decision. Because of this, the decisions are always lopsided. So the decision shall be through negotiation, and a golden mean lies somewhere between yes or no. But we are pushing a decision to be yes or no. If you take the Brexit itself, there are many intricate questions that come up after Brexit. How the border between North Ireland and Ireland has to be. What shall be done to the other nationalities living in Britain? What shall be the status of London as a financial hub for Europe? All these questions were never thought by the common people. So once the Brexit referendum was taken up, how to handle this situation, how to come out of this chaos is a major question to Britain now. Now let's get into the next. Is Bharatiya Janata Party jittery in Gujarat? So let's avoid this party and politics. Let's talk about few things. So after 1990s, decline of the national parties has started. But in the last 2014 election, you can see a revival of a national party at the parliamentary level. So in this context, consolidation of the votes, developmental propaganda, these have become important electioneering techniques. So consolidation of the votes was happening before on caste lines. Now it is more shifted towards the communal lines. So if you take Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, what are the natural protections to minorities in India? Because the majority religious minorities, the majority religion, it itself has been divided into many castes inherently that provides a natural protection to minorities. That's what is the opinion which was expressed. Now in this context, consolidation of majoritarian vote can be a threat to the secular fabric of the country. That's what is the concern expressed now. So beyond this, we don't need to discuss anything in this particular article. But one more point. The developmental perspective also changed after 1990s. So visible infrastructure development, visible economic growth numbers, these are considered as development. Making human capital or providing for human capital through education and health, these are most neglected. This is what is the criticism on the Gujarat model of development, where the GDP growth numbers are remarkable, but health and education indices, if we observe them, they are very poor in this particular part of the country. So growth is dominant over development, physical infrastructure over the human capital development is being given a priority. Because of this, inequalities have increased, especially the middle class and the lower socio-economic groups. They started feeling the heat of unemployment and growing inequalities. Now, here redefining the hate speech. The Indian Penal Code is about to be amended as per the Law Commission recommendations to make hate speech itself a criminal offence that is punishable up to 2 years or 5,000 rupees as penalty. Now, Aadhaar linking, CJI frowns upon hyperbole. Already we have discussed what are the issues that are going with regard to Aadhaar. So, Kalvari submarine is a big step in defense preparedness. This is a Scorpion submarine which has been brought in from France. So recently, the leakage of Scorpion papers from Australia was in news. And it's a diesel electric submarine. So remember these 2 points. It's a diesel electric submarine. And then, so Congress terms Election Commission a BJP puppet. Let's ignore this. But remember that Election Commission is a constitutional body. So this Election Commission of India and its integrity is very much important for promoting or protecting the processual democracy in India. So elections are a process through which democracy is established and survived, and the very institution conducting these elections and its integrity is questioned. People's confidence over the election process and the entire processual democracy comes into question. That's what is the point which you need to remember over here. And then, US under fabricated spy mania, that is US-Russia relations are nosediving, that you need to remember. So, the China summons Australian envoy in amid meddling row. So, these are all not much important news for us. And WTO meet ends without consensus. Already you know that. Here understand what is meant by peace clause, aggregate measure on agriculture, and what are the safeguard mechanisms. Try to understand these words in the WTO discussions. Income share of top 1% surge, that is the report. It is about growing inequalities in the world. Try to go through this article. In the last page, I gave you the notes which will be available to you at laix.in/CivilsPrep. Thank you very much and all the best.